There was a feeling in the mid-2010s that the internet had sprung a leak. It was a strange, chaotic, and sometimes hilarious leak. You'd be scrolling through photos of your friends, and suddenly, you'd see it. A cat face mask. A $10 drone that looked like it would immediately catch fire. A green helmet, designed for a chicken. These were the inescapable, bizarre, and weirdly hypnotic ads from Wish.com. For years, weird Wish ads became their own subgenre of online content. A global meme that everyone was in on. But the joke was on us, because behind the $1 smartphone projector was a story of a Google-level engineering genius, a secret meeting with Jeff Bezos, a $10 billion offer that was refused, and a financial collapse so complete it's hard to even comprehend. This isn't just a story about weird ads. It's a story about a company that built a $14 billion empire on a digital illusion, and then forgot to build a foundation. The architect. It all begins, as these stories often do, with a brilliant mind from Google. His name is Piotr Szulczewski. He wasn't a salesman. He was an architect. A Polish immigrant who grew up in Warsaw, he moved to Canada and graduated from the University of Waterloo with a degree in mathematics and computer science. He was a pure builder. He joined Google as an intern and quickly became a full-time engineer, where he wrote the prototype algorithms for keyword expansion. It was a feature that reportedly added over $100 million to Google's bottom line. He even spent time in Google's South Korea office, learning how different markets demanded entirely different interfaces. He understood how to build systems that predict human behavior. In 2009, he left. He had enough savings for 2 years. He spent 6 months, completely alone, just writing code. He was building a new kind of ad recommendation platform, a system that could analyze a person's browsing behavior to predict their interests, perhaps even before they knew them. He called the company Context Logic. The name tells you the entire original mission. This was not an e-commerce company. This was a piece of technology, an algorithm designed to compete directly with Google's own ad network. He raised $1.7 million from investors, including the CEO of Yelp. Facebook saw the power of this technology almost immediately. They offered Szulczewski $20 million just to acquire the algorithm and integrate it into their own system. He refused. Investors were furious. One reportedly stormed into his office, screaming. They didn't understand. Szulczewski, joined by his old college friend Danny Zhang, realized that building an ad network from scratch was a brutal, sales-heavy business, and that just wasn't their strength. So they pivoted. They used the powerful context logic engine to build a new site, wishwall.me. It wasn't even a store. It was, in essence, the Instagram of window shopping. It was just a place to browse curated, beautiful products you couldn't even buy and add them to a wish list. And people loved it. They scrolled for hours, bookmarking things they'd never own. Szulczewski had tapped into something primal. He wasn't selling products. He was selling the simple, lizard brain joy of wanting. The turning point. The user base was massive. Now, he just needed something to sell. Szulczewski began cold emailing thousands of low-cost, unbranded manufacturers in China. He made them an offer that was impossible to refuse. He had a massive, captive audience of Western buyers, a direct pipeline into their brains. All the merchants had to do was cut their prices. In the very beginning, the pitch was a revolution. Wish wouldn't even take a commission. It would be a glorified and free middleman. It was the ultimate growth at all costs move. Merchants agreed in droves. Almost overnight, Wish became one of the largest marketplaces on Earth. But it was a ghost. It handled no inventory. It managed no fulfillment. It shipped nothing. It was just a layer of code, a sophisticated algorithm connecting a factory in Shenzhen directly to your Facebook feed. As the company grew, it did start taking a cut, around 15%, but its core philosophy never changed. Chase growth, get users, and figure out the profits later. This is the classic Silicon Valley playbook. You do this to position yourself for a massive acquisition. You build the user base, you spend the investor funding, and then you get a giant payout. But this is where the story of Wish defies all known logic. By 2016, Wish was growing at a blistering pace. Szulczewski was invited to a secret meeting at Amazon's headquarters. A meeting with Jeff Bezos himself. Lawyers were present. Non-disclosure agreements were signed. The agenda, as Shulchevsky later called it, was clear. Amazon wanted to buy them. The rumored offer was a staggering $10 billion. For context, Shulchevsky reportedly idolized Bezos. This was the perfect exit. This was the dream. And it wasn't the only offer. The Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba, seeing a new global competitor, reportedly came in with the exact same price, $10 billion. At the time, Wish was only valued by its own investors at $3 billion. This was more than a home run. This was winning the World Series. Piotr Shulchevsky, the man who built the algorithm, looked at the $10 billion offers, and he said no. He told insiders he believed he could grow Wish to at least $100 billion in gross sales. He didn't just think he was building a company, he thought he was building the next Amazon. The hidden cost. For a brief, shining moment, it looked like he might be right. The growth was beyond astronomical. In 2018, revenue doubled to $1.9 billion. Wish became the single most downloaded shopping app in the entire world. It was adding 100 million new users every single year. By 2019, it was the third biggest e-commerce marketplace in the United States by sales. The momentum was unstoppable. In December of 2020, Wish went public. Its IPO raised another $1.1 billion, pushing the company's total valuation to over $14 billion. Shulchevsky had turned down $10 billion, and for a moment, looked like a genius who had made an extra $4 billion just by waiting. But the entire time, there was a dark, screaming number at the bottom of their balance sheet. A number that investors, drunk on growth, had chosen to ignore. Wish was not profitable. And this isn't the normal, acceptable, we're reinvesting in growth kind of unprofitability. Wish was spectacularly unprofitable. Their profit margin was negative 100%. For every single dollar in revenue they earned, they spent $2. The more their revenue went up, the more money they bled. The entire $14 billion empire was built on one single, shaky, and incredibly expensive pillar: cheap Facebook ads. And this is where we must talk about those ads. The cat mask. The 3-day six-pack cream. The USB-powered pregnancy test. Why were they so weird? It was the algorithm. Shulchevsky's Google tier code was working, but not in the way he intended. It was designed to match products to users based on browsing behavior. But browsing behavior is a messy, chaotic signal. The algorithm discovered, through brute force testing, that bizarre, nonsensical, and borderline creepy items made people stop scrolling. It drove clicks. It drove engagement. And the algorithm, a machine that only understands numbers, interpreted the human reaction of, "Wait, what on earth is that?" as, "I want to buy this." Wish wasn't optimizing for sales. It was optimizing for absurdity. And its only strategy was to pour gasoline on this algorithmic fire. Wish became the single largest advertiser on Facebook and Instagram, and one of the biggest on Google. It was a digital monster, feeding on its own VC funding, all to push chicken helmets in front of your eyes. But that pillar was about to collapse. The collapse. The machine was breaking, and then came the perfect storm. The pandemic hit. Everyone was stuck at home. Online shopping exploded. But this wasn't good for Wish. It was a disaster. Suddenly, every company on Earth, from your local restaurant to global brands, was pouring their entire budget into online advertising. It was their only way to survive. The cost of those Facebook and Google ads, the price for keywords, the fee for user impressions. It all skyrocketed. Wish's one and only strategy, outbidding everyone for ad space, was now impossible. Their cost of acquiring a single customer went from expensive to catastrophic. Their revenue peaked in 2020 at $2.5 billion. Their losses that same year, over $600 million. And as the money dried up, the facade crumbled, revealing the ugly truth. There was no loyalty. Customers weren't loyal to Wish. They were loyal to absurdly cheap prices. And when the prices weren't as cheap, they left. But they also left because the customer experience was, to put it lightly, a nightmare. The growth over everything motto meant growth over quality, growth over safety, and growth over basic customer support. Scams were not just present on the platform, they were a feature. Sellers from around the world were rampant. They would post a high-demand item, like a $70 tablet, and get hundreds of legitimate 5-star reviews. Then, they would swap the product listing. The same 5-star reviews for the tablet were now attached to a cheap piece of plastic, a tiny stand, or a note in broken English saying the real item was coming. It never did. And if you got scammed, good luck. Wish had virtually zero customer support. The official policy was a 30-day return window, but buyers were often forced to pay for expensive international return shipping, a cost that was often more than the product itself. It was a system designed to make you give up. This wasn't just a marketplace. For many, it was a trap. And just as Wish was in this death spiral, the final killer blow arrived. In September 2022, a new app appeared, Temu. Temu was not a small startup. It was backed by Pinduoduo, a Chinese tech giant with a $170 billion market cap. It had vastly more money. It ran 2 ads during the 2023 Super Bowl, becoming the youngest brand in history to do so. And it was, in every single way, Wish 2.0. It had the same direct-from-supplier model, but it fixed everything Wish had broken. The interface was clean and categorized. The shipping was faster and often free, and most importantly, it had functional customer service with an easy return policy. Temu didn't just compete with Wish, it simply replaced it. The bigger picture. The end came swiftly. Wish's revenue was in absolute freefall. Hundreds of employees were laid off. The brand was tarnished, a global joke that was no longer funny. Their monthly active users, once over 100 million, plummeted to just 12 million. Piotr Shulchevsky, the man who turned down $10 billion, stepped down as CEO. In early 2024, the parent company, Context Logic, announced it was selling the Wish e-commerce platform. The price? $173 million. Not billion, million. It was a 99% collapse from its $14 billion peak. It was a fraction of the $10 billion Bezos had put on the table. And what happened to Context Logic, the original company? It still exists. It's a public zombie company. It has no debt, a bit of cash, and one primary asset, $2.7 billion in net operating loss carryforwards. That is a fancy financial term for a massive tax break on any future profits, if it ever makes a profit again. The board is currently looking for a financial sponsor to help it figure out what to do with its valuable tax credits. Piotr Shulchevsky himself has a new venture, an AI company called Magi Inc., which aims to change the world. The story of Wish is a monument to a specific kind of Silicon Valley hubris. It's the belief that growth is the same as value, that engagement is the same as loyalty, and that a clever algorithm is the same as a sustainable business. Wish built an empire of clicks, but never sold a single person on its brand. It proved that you can capture the world's attention for a moment, but you can't build a legacy on a house of cards. So, what did we really learn from the internet's dollar store? That an algorithm can show you the world, or just a chicken helmet? Drop your thoughts below. In the age of AI, how much trust do you put in the code that curates your life?